My mother-in-law excluded my kids from the family beach trip because they're too wild. So I bought a beach house. But when a hurricane shut down her luxury resort, she came begging for shelter. And that's when I showed her the papers that changed everything. We had already made some modifications to our beach trip. My mother-in-law's voice was dripping with false sweetness on the phone. The resort isn't big. And, well, with your three so energetic, we think it would be best if they skip this one. I gripped the kitchen counter as I observed my children, Emma, Lucas, 6, and Sophie, 4, playing in the backyard out the window. They'd been anticipating months for this family trip, their beach toys already in the bag. Let me get this straight, Margaret, I said firmly. You're excluding my children from the annual beach trip but inviting all their cousins? Oh, don't be so dramatic, Jessica. It's just Melissa's kids are more well-behaved in these establishments, and Yvonne's twins are best placed in a resort, she replied. This year we are residing at Ocean Breeze Resort. It's very exclusive. Of course it was. Melissa's country club membership had probably secured them the reservation. She never let anyone forget her husband's career in finance or her designer wardrobe. The kids have been waiting for this, I said, watching Sophie chase butterflies in her dinosaur shirt. They had already picked out a special seashell to give to their cousins. Well, if you and Daniel had listened to etiquette rather than to merely letting them go wild. Margaret's comment was cutting. Besides, we've all worked things out. Melissa's girls need their own suite, and Yvonne's twins were assigned an ocean view room. There just isn't room. I recalled our summer beach trip last year, how my kids were picking up after lunch without being asked to, while their cousins were playing games on tablets. How Emma offered her beach toys to everyone freely, and Lucas helped his little nephew overcome his fear of the waves. Does Daniel know anything about this decision? I asked, turning to my husband. Oh, he understands it's for the best. Ocean Breeze Resort has an image to maintain. Then, out of the blue, I heard laughter outside. Lucas had turned on the sprinkler, and the three of them were running through it with raw, unself-conscious joy. No designer clothes. No stodgy etiquette. Just unadulterated happiness. You're right, Margaret, I finally said. Ocean Breeze Resort does have standards. And, thank goodness, so do I. What is that supposed to mean? She asked. It means my kids won't be anywhere they're not fully welcome. Have your little elitist vacation. I slammed the phone onto the receiver before she could respond, my hands shaking but my will steady. Outside, the kids kept playing, happily unaware that their grandmother had just made them unwanted guests at a family vacation. That night, after the kids were in bed. After the children had gone to bed, Daniel found me at the kitchen table. A look at my face informed him that I was angry. Your mother called, I told him quietly. She invited our kids over for the beach vacation. Ocean Breeze Resort is too upscale for kids who actually act like kids, I suppose. His eyes blackened. She what? He growled. Oh, but Melissa's cute little princesses and Yvonne's twins can still attend, I added, not being able to keep the bitterness from my tone. They're appropriate for the resort. I'll talk to her, Daniel started to say, but I shook my head. No. I'm done trying to win your family's approval for our children to like them for what they are. They're kind, happy, and perfectly well-mannered. If that's not adequate for your mother's favorite resort vacation spot, then we'll make our own. Daniel paused for a moment, then queried, What are you doing? I produced my laptop and opened a website I knew so well. Do you remember that cute beach house we saw last year? I asked. The one on Gulf Shore? It's still for sale. Jessica, that's a huge investment, he said. You see that inheritance I got from my grandmother? I've been holding on to it for something special. And what could be more special than showing our children that they don't need anyone's approval to be worthy of great things? As I browsed pictures of the adorable but humble beach home, I recalled Margaret's condescending tone, Melissa's sneer, and all the ways Daniel's relatives had made our children feel inadequate. Furthermore, I went on with a small smile. Gulf Shore is famous for sea turtle nesting season. The children would just love that so much more than some elitist resort. Daniel looked at the photographs, then at me. Seriously, he asked. I'm dead serious, I told him. Let them have their little exclusive resort. We'll make something better, memories our children will always hold dear, in a place where they'll never feel they need to apologize for being who they are. What I hadn't told Daniel was that I had already studied the summer weather patterns. Ocean Breeze Resort rested on a part of the coast renowned for hurricane susceptibility. Gulf Shore, which was behind a natural barrier island, was a lot safer. But that would be their worry to contend with later. As I sent off an email to the agent requesting to be taken on a tour, my phone beeped with a text message from Margaret. I hope you'll see this as best. The resort has just the most lovely etiquette classes for the other children, it read. I didn't reply. Rather, I looked at the pictures tacked to our fridge, Emma helping out at an animal shelter, Lucas grinning at his crazy art show, Sophie holding a jar of bugs she'd caught. My untamed, wild, wonderful children. My untamed, wild, wonderful children were owed far better than to be locked out by their own family. Margaret could have her clubby resort vacation. We were about to create something more valuable, a place where our children would never be forced to keep their light hidden from anyone. I didn't know, though, that summer had yet another surprise for all of us. The beach house sale happened faster than we expected. Early in June, we had a cozy 3-bedroom home in Gulf Shore, which was just above the water. The excitement on the kids' faces when they saw their new summer home made every penny worth it. Can we see the sea turtles from here? Emma asked, pressing her face against the window of what would be our shared bedroom. Better than that, I grinned. There's a sea turtle conservation program where kids can help monitor the nests. I already signed you up as junior volunteers. Their expressions were one of pure joy, the sort that no luxury resort could ever match. Meanwhile, little pieces and details of the family's luxury vacation schedule continued popping up in group chats I was still not excused from. Melissa posted photos of specially crafted resort apparel for her girls. Yvonne sent out screenshots of Ocean Breeze Resort's excessive luxuries. And, of course, Margaret wouldn't stop bragging about private cabanas and white tablecloth dinners. Did you catch Mom's latest post? Daniel asked one afternoon as we painted the kids' room a vibrant seafoam green. They hired an etiquette teacher to give the cousins before the trip, he explained. I groaned. Heaven forbid a child uses the wrong fork for eating sandcastle-constructed snacks. The first sign that karma had something planned came in mid-June, a brief weather alert about out-of-pattern storms forming in the Atlantic. I saw Margaret's worried posts regarding an early hurricane season, but she quickly dispelled all of our worries that Ocean Breeze Resort had excellent indoor activities. We spent our weekends getting the beach house ready, letting the kids pick out decorations and paint seashells to hang on the walls. Standing at the window after hanging up the phone with Margaret, I looked out at the kids still playing in the sprinkler. The evening breeze rustled the curtains softly, and for a fleeting moment, I let myself get lost in wondering how we arrived at this place. It hadn't always been so. There had been a time when Margaret was different, softer, not so fixated on appearances. The transformation began slowly after Melissa wed the banker. That evening, while Daniel and I completed the final details on the purchase of the Gulf Shore house, an unexpected text from Teresa, the former housekeeper of Margaret's, came into my phone. Teresa worked for the family for over 20 years before getting abruptly dismissed a year ago. Jessica, there's something you should be aware of your mother-in-law and Ocean Breeze Resort. Not all what it appears. The text made me anxious. Teresa was always a secretive and good woman. Writing to me after all this time seemed sinister. I chose not to inform anyone of this, rather getting myself occupied with decorating the new beach house for the children. A week later, rummaging through the buying papers to try and make sense of it all, I noticed a yellow letter stuck between the papers. There were some old photographs of Ocean Breeze Resort, dated 25 years ago. In one, I noticed Margaret standing beside a man who was not my father-in-law. They appeared very close. The photograph was stamped with a handwritten note. Summer 2010. Grand opening. My mind began connecting dots I never knew existed. Margaret's recent obsession with the resort. Her insistence on holding my children back. Teresa's note. There was something more here, a secret story waiting to be uncovered. I slid the photos into my desk and promised myself to investigate further. For now, we had a house to prepare and 3 kids thrilled about their very own beach getaway. But as I watched Daniel addressing invitations, I could not help but wonder, how many secrets was his family keeping? And how long before they all fell apart? I was brought back to reality by the children's laughter. Emma had found a seashell in the garden and was convinced that it was a magical treasure from the ocean. Her innocence reminded me why we were doing this. Some treasures, I thought, were far more valuable than any membership in an elite club. What I did not realize then was that the yellow envelope was merely the beginning of a series of revelations that would shake the very foundations of our family, and that the hurricane which was raging towards the shores of Ocean Breeze Resort would bring along more than its destructive winds. The move to Gulf Shore was underway when I received yet another message from Teresa, this time an audio note. "Your mother-in-law wasn't always like this, Jessica. She changed after the accident at the resort 15 years ago. Ask her about Mark Vaughn." The name sounded familiar. I dug through Daniel's old files and found a yellowed newspaper clipping. Mark Vaughn was Ocean Breeze Resort's original structural engineer, but he died under mysterious circumstances during construction. The article had briefly mentioned that he left the project incomplete and a widow bereaved. As I was organizing the new kitchen, Melissa appeared at our door uninvited. Her usually flawless face was lined with concern. "Can we speak?" she asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The kids were on the beach playing with Daniel, so I invited her in. "There's something you need to know," she began. She began to speak, her hands trembling as she clutched her coffee cup. "Mom, Margaret, she's not who everybody thinks she is. Ocean Breeze Resort, there's a reason she's so obsessed with it." Melissa didn't get to continue before her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and I saw the color leave her face. "I have to go," she said, getting up and leaving her half-consumed coffee on the table. In her rush, a small envelope dropped out of her bag and onto the floor. I bent down to retrieve it to return it to her, but she had already rushed out the door to her car. There was an old photograph in the envelope. A younger Margaret smiled beside Mark Vaughn, holding what appeared to be blueprints of the resort. The date on the back matched the months leading up to the engineer's death. I researched more on Mark Vaughn that evening after the kids were asleep. His death was murky news, a construction inspection accident. Something didn't add up, however, in the timing. The accident had happened one day to the hour after the new resort ownership documents were signed. There was a storm brewing on the horizon, literally and figuratively. The local news was saying that the hurricane bearing down on the coast was gaining speed, while I felt like I was about to uncover something that would change our family forever. What I didn't know then was that Melissa had an even bigger secret. One that explained her surprise visit. One that was directly tied to why Margaret was so desperate to keep my children away from Ocean Breeze Resort this summer. As the hurricane drew closer, the forecasts worsened. While scrolling through the news on my phone, a call from an unknown number startled me. It was Mark Vaughn's widow. "I've been following what's been happening at Ocean Breeze Resort," she began, her voice trembling. "When I learned you were Margaret's daughter-in-law, I knew I had to contact you. There are documents, proof of what really happened that night." She explained that Mark had discovered major structural flaws in the resort just before his death. The building had been constructed on unstable ground, ignoring the original geological reports. Mark had threatened to expose them, but he never got the chance. As we spoke, my phone vibrated with a panicked text from Melissa. "I can't pretend anymore. Caroline found letters. Love letters between Mom and Mark. They're dated right up until the day he died." The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fit. Margaret's obsessive devotion to the resort. Her complete personality transformation. The suspicious timing of Mark's death. But there were still too many variables. That afternoon, as we were preparing the house for the storm, Daniel found an old box in the attic. Inside, there were more photographs and documents relating to the resort, including a technical report with the signature of Mark Vaughn. The report detailed severe structural problems and was dated the day Mark Vaughn died. "This is bigger than we thought," Daniel whispered, his face pale as he read the documents. "If this is the case, the entire resort could collapse in a large storm." Our conversation was cut short by the sound of a car pulling up. It was Yvonne, My other sister-in-law, stopping by unannounced. Her face was a mix of resolve and terror. "I'm not here to argue the vacation," she stated before we could speak. "I'm here because I found this in Mom's office." She pulled out a crumpled envelope from her purse. There was a letter from Mark Vaughn, dated the day he died, and a USB stick. The letter began, "Dear Margaret, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. What I've discovered about the resort can't be kept a secret." A low growl of thunder in the distance heralded the storm's arrival, while 15 years of secrets kept hidden threatened to come crashing down, just as destructive as the hurricane that was closing in on them. But the contents of the USB were worse than we had hoped. There were photos of the original land survey, ignored geological reports, emails from Mark to Margaret that confirmed a relationship of more than professional. But the worst part was a video. It was of Mark Vaughn touring the resort the night he died. He was recording cracks in the foundation on his cell phone. "This building won't survive a large storm," his voice said on the recording. "Margaret, I know this will ruin your plans, but I cannot be a part of this." The video abruptly cut off. As we processed what we had seen, the hurricane intensified. My phone rang. Emergency alert. Ocean Breeze Resort was being evacuated. Severe structural damage had been discovered by the authorities. "Where's Mom?" Daniel insisted, frantically dialing Margaret's number. She wasn't answering. A few minutes later, Melissa burst in, soaked from the rain. "Caroline found more letters," she wept. "Mom and Mark were planning to run away together. He was going to expose the problems at the resort, and then they were both going to disappear. But someone else found out first." The lights dimmed abruptly, and everything went dark. We all looked up at the sound of another car coming. Headlights sliced through our driveway, and I glimpsed through the mist of rain a familiar figure. It was Margaret. She came in like a storm herself, her usually perfect hair tousled by the storm. "Where are they?" she demanded. "The papers. The USB. I have to destroy them before." She stopped. Her eyes widened when she saw all of us seated around the table. The evidence lay before us. Her expression transformed from anger to horror as she watched the video of Mark Vaughn on my laptop. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't want this. He was going to ruin everything, our plans, our future." A thunderclap resounded through the house, and my phone vibrated with an emergency alert at that exact moment. The emergency alert sliced through my phone screen. The east wing of Ocean Breeze Resort was collapsing. Margaret's eyes teared up as she stared at the screen. "I should have listened," she whispered. Mark was right. He was always right. Yet there were even more surprises to follow. The sound of another car pulling up made us all turn toward the window. I watched in surprise as a familiar figure emerged from the stormy night. Someone we believed was dead for 15 years. "Mark." Margaret's voice broke as the man stepped into our living room, rainwater dripping from his coat. But it wasn't Mark Vaughn. It was his twin brother, Anthony Vaughn. "I've been following you for 15 years, Margaret," Anthony said, his voice resentful, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. He pulled a worn notebook from his bag. "Mark's diary. My brother did not die in an accident," Anthony said. "I found him that night when sorting through papers. He had confessed it all, the unstable ground, the safety reports he had disregarded, his plan to elope with you. He begged me to help him do the right thing." Margaret collapsed into a chair, her haughtiness dissipating. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I loved him. And that is why you let him die?" Anthony's voice cut through the wail of the storm. "When he fell over during that inspection, you were there. You could have called for help. Instead, you took the papers and went away." There was silence in the room, a deaf, total silence. The children slumbered above, unaware of the deceit and betrayal unfolding. Regret sat on Margaret's face. "I've lived with the guilt day by day," she confessed, tears streaming down her face. "That's how I got stuck on the resort, with perfection, with control. If only I could maintain everything perfect, perhaps I could put it out of my mind." "And that's why you kept my kids out?" I charged, finally jolting the last piece of the puzzle into place. "Because they make you think about the freedom you gave up? The life you might have lived?" Margaret nodded slowly. Seeing them so wild, so authentic, reminded me of Mark. Of the person I once was when I was with him. And I couldn't stand it. A deafening, abhorrent crack ripped the moment in two. The unmistakable ring of ocean breeze resort giving into the fury of the hurricane. On TV, live footage showed the upscale resort collapsing, unleashing 15 years of guilt and shame. But the real tempest was only beginning. Anthony had a final revelation, one that would irrevocably alter the course of our family's life. Mark left something more, Anthony announced, pulling out a parchment yellow envelope from his pocket. His true will. Signed on the date he passed away. He had left half his stakes of Ocean Breeze Resort to his unborn child. The room fell into stunned silence. The only sound was the screaming wind outside. Everyone looked at Melissa, whose face had gone deathly white. "No," Margaret whispered. But her answer told us that she did know. "Yes," Anthony said. "Mom," Melissa interrupted, weeping. "Caroline is not Robert's daughter. She's Mark's." The revelation hit like lightning. Margaret's obsessive need to control Caroline, to mold her into a flawless person, it all now fit. She wasn't just her granddaughter, she was the last piece of Mark Vaughn that remained. "That's why you wanted so badly to spend the summer at the resort," Melissa continued. "You knew the structural issues would worsen with the hurricane. You wanted to be rid of the last vestige of your secret." The storm outside was raging at its height. Through the windows, we watched the waves crashing against the shore in angry turmoil. And then, piece by piece, Ocean Breeze Resort, a testament to 15 years of secrets and guilt, crashed into the sea. "I'm sorry," Margaret sobbed, collapsing completely. "I'm so sorry." And then we heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Emma, Lucas, and Sophie came down in pajamas, eyes wide with fear at the storm. Without hesitation, they ran to Margaret, carrying with them the kind of comfort only children can bring, sheer, unconditioned, uncritical. "Grandma, don't cry," Sophie exclaimed, wrapping her arms around her. "We can share our seashells with you." That pure, simple act of love broke the last barrier around Margaret. She spread her arms to her grandchildren, children she had previously rejected for being too similar to the man she had lost. "These kids," Anthony whispered, "they have his same free spirit. He'd have been so proud of them." Throughout the weeks that followed, as the coast recovered from the hurricane, our family also did, starting its healing process. Margaret confessed to the authorities and accepted what was her due. Caroline finally received the truth from her father and found comfort in the letters and videos Anthony had preserved. The Gulf Shore home became our real family haven. A place where appearances didn't matter. Where children could be children. Where secrets of the past gave way to honesty and acceptance. On the last day of summer, I watched my family clustered on the beach. Margaret building sandcastles with her grandchildren. Melissa and Caroline trading tales of Mark. The children running loose down the beach. And I understood, some hurricanes, as destructive as they are necessary. They blow away the past and make room for new beginnings. And there, on the ocean that had witnessed so much pain and so many secrets, my family and I finally found where we belonged. Not to an exclusive resort, but to a home where we could all be precisely who we were meant to be.